I think what intimidates individuals in looking at financial information is that they don't know where to begin. They don't know where to ask the right questions about the numbers. So my goal is to help someone see that yes, the numbers tell a story, and let me show you, you don't need me coaching you. Let me show you the strategies to ask the right questions about the numbers, and there's a unique strategy for each of the financial statements. So just because you've mastered one doesn't mean you've got the others well understood. But once you have the strategy, it doesn't matter if it's a service organization, if it's a manufacturing, a distributor, a merchandiser, retailer, it doesn't matter what type of business, the strategy works of getting the most out of the numbers. And what you want in a business meeting, in a business setting, as a manager, to be able to ask those right questions and know that what you're asking really is the relevant question and not something that's kind of only on the peripheral of an issue. So that's the joy that I see in the numbers, is the numbers tell a story. And my goal is to help folks see what story do they tell and give them the tools to ask the questions, to ask about the numbers. Well, the financial information helps us see where the most fruitful areas might be to begin that process and then work incrementally towards generating the internal cash flows which every organization needs. It's the lifeblood of every organization because you can have profits. And we had, a cash flow statement has not been around but for 5 years in the European Union, in the European community. And it is an underappreciated tool because you could have and the reason we have it is because we had organizations showing profits, filing for bankruptcy that were failing. And so really what we were missing was we were two sides of a coin. We understood one side really well, but we never turned it over to look at the other side, which is really the more important piece, which is the cash flow, which is the lifeblood of any organization. Organization still has to have the genuine assets. It still has to have strategy, execute the strategy, look at the performance, understand the risks, and create the value for the organization. So there's a process involved there, but it ultimately comes down to the cash. And what most non-financial folks don't understand is that they're reading the financial press thinking, I'm going to get educated about finance and I'm going to look at the financial press, and they're reading about revenue growth and profit for the period. While those are interesting, those in the know that understand the analysis know that that only takes them part way. That's not taking them all the way to the finish line where they understand what drives value. So the numbers really do all fit together, and so to me that's a very exciting story to tell. It's not so much how do the numbers come together, it's so what do the numbers mean. I think it's very important that academics don't just speak their opinion. It's very important that academics speak from what does the research tell us? Because we all have opinions. The question is, let the data tell us what's happening. And that's what myself and two other colleagues who've been involved in the research on high-performing companies have done, is that we've let the data tell us. And we've looked at tens of different kinds of ratios, 50, 60 different ratios, and we looked at tens of thousands of companies in the MSCI database. And so we know, looking at those characteristics and allowing the data tell us what's really important for a high performer. And a high performer isn't one that just comes and goes. A high performer is one that can sustain it over a decade or longer. And so when we did our research, we looked at over a decade or longer, did they sustain and create value for their owners of the business? They create wealth. See, wealth is a long-term concept, not a short-term concept. And sometimes we think, well, share price, did we add more share value? And that's a very short-term view. Economic wealth creation is a long-term view. So I think basing our comments and what we bring to the classroom based on what does the research tell us. Let's translate the academic research into the practical. How does this make me a better manager? How can I use what they learned over here to make me a better decision maker and lead people better or evaluate financials better? Those kinds of things I think are the key to taking the educational experience to the next level. Well, I had the very great fortune of meeting a European colleague who was at Kellogg teaching leadership and change. and we had the opportunity to brainstorm together, and we started team teaching classes together. And he says, you know, I have this relationship in the south of France. Would you like to come and do a program called Business at the Intersection? And it was a capstone for the master's degree program, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And as a result of coming back again and again, I think I've come now 4 or 5 years, and I've just expanded my role with the students here. It's such an unusual master's degree in terms of its specialty, its niche in change, innovation, leadership, which are genuine assets that any organization could have. But this program narrows the focus and takes us into that in more depth. And I find that attractive. If I were to draw a diagram of the linkage between strategy, execution, valuation, I would, at the foundation of that diagram, at the very bottom, would be performance measurement and evaluation. It would definitely be, we've got to be looking at the numbers. And then right on top of that, so if I were drawing a picture, right on top of that, I would put vigilance to change, because the numbers will help you see where changes are occurring, but you have to have the adaptability, the know-how to manage change effectively and to bring people along with you in a change process. Change is a very difficult thing. I liken it to, there's a toy called a Slinky, and anytime you start with a Slinky, you pick up this toy, and you have to exercise a lot of energy. But once you get past a critical stage, the rest of it comes very quickly. So that managing change is much like this Slinky. You're going to be pulling folks along until all of a sudden you get the momentum and you can follow. That's one of the things I like about this program, is that it emphasizes that how do we manage the change, and gives folks the skills to manage the change and be a leader in the same stage. Now, so in this environment where on the foundation is the financial performance, and then layer on that the vigilance to change, on top of that is what I would layer the assets, the genuine assets of the firm, whether it's the intellectual property, whether it's a product or a service. There are genuine assets that organizations have. They have to identify those and be continually innovating. We don't live in a static environment. That vigilance to change forces us to continue to think about how do we improve our genuine assets, how do we add to that portfolio. And then based on that, I think I layer on the strategy and execution, comes on top of that. And they all link together. You know, companies can have great strategies. And what I've learned from my research on high-performing companies that I've worked with 2 colleagues is that high-performance companies don't operate in silos. They're taking all of those factors into effect. And strategy execution. I mean, there are many high-performing companies that are more than willing to tell their competition what their strategy is, because they know they execute it better than anyone else. And so they're willing to step out there and put it all in their financial report, says here's what we do, here's our financial indicators, here's what we're tracking, here's how we do it, whether we decentralize or organize. And they are very clear about their execution. But they know that they're really okay, because it's a lot harder to do the strategy than it is to develop the strategy.